I want to welcome all you today. This is Steve Zeltzer. I'm with LaborFest, and we're having a press conference here today in front of UCSF on the issue of the defense of the Bernard Zakheim mural. And the reason we're doing that is because the UCSF managers, executives first they called for the destruction of the mural. They said they didn't have money to protect it. Then after complaints and publicity, they said that they did have money for it, and they awarded it to a company that, in our opinion, is questionable whether they have the skills to protect the mural. What is the Bernard Zakheim mural? The Bernard Zakheim murals in the Toland Hall at UCSF were commissioned by the WPA in 1946 to show the history of medicine in California. So they're very historic murals, and there are treasures, really, of California. There are no other murals on the history of medicine in California. So this is a very important contribution to education and to history to have these murals here. And we believe that they're under threat, they should be destroyed, and that, in fact, the importance of having the murals is critical. So we are urging the University of California in San Francisco to protect these murals, to have a proper protection, and also to guarantee that they will be maintained here on the campus at UCSF. They've not guaranteed that the murals will even stay here. So they can end up in storage, and they also contain some very important historical figures, including Biddie Mason, who was a midwife, a slave brought to California by her master. She broke free, Biddie Mason broke free from her slavery, and she was a midwife. She was the first celebrated African-American midwife in California. She was a healthcare worker in California, which is very important to be recognized. And until actually this publicity about the mural, nobody even knew that Biddie Mason was in this mural. Nobody even knew who Biddie Mason was. So what we're saying is another reason these murals should be protected and they should stay on UCSF for the students, the faculty, the staff, and the public to be able to see these murals on the history of California. Now, one of the issues is priority. The university has billions of dollars in trust funds that they have, yet they said they didn't have money to protect the mural. All of a sudden they found money to protect the mural. What we believe is part of the problem here at the University of California is that the developers are driving the development at UCSF. We want to know why an executive of this University of California would actually say that these art murals should be destroyed. It's a question. They're supposed to be protecting the art treasures of California, and they were calling for their destruction. It raised the question about who are these people who are making these decisions. They didn't consult the Zakheim family, and how dare them really talk about destroying murals and not even consult the artists, which are required under California law. That you consult the artists. They had contempt for the artists, and we believe that they have to be held accountable. So we're having this press conference. We're also going to begin a campaign and unions and other organizations to protect these murals, to make sure that they're maintained here and that the people of California, the students and faculty, have a right to see them. So our first speaker is Lope Yapa Jr., who is the Vice President of the Washington High Alumni, and he himself and the alumni and the students have been fighting another similar struggle around the defense of the Victor Arnautoff murals. And it really says something. In San Francisco, which is world-renowned for murals, for art treasures, why are we having to fight to protect murals? This is a real question we have to ask the people in San Francisco, at UCSF, and this country. Why are we out here today trying to protect murals? This is a question. So welcome, Lope.
Good afternoon. My name is Lope Yapa Jr. I'm Vice President of the George Washington High School Alumni Association. And as Steve Zeltzer just mentioned, I also am one of the key people that has been trying to protect and preserve the murals at George Washington High School. Another great set of priceless New Deal art by Victor Arnautoff. And when it was brought to my attention about the UCSF Toland Hall Bernard Zakheim murals, I was actually shocked, because here we are in a very world-famous medical building that has pretty much abdicated their art stewardship after receiving these incredible priceless murals by Bernard Zakheim from the 1930s, and to find out early in the year when the developers of UCSF wanted to, again, like I mentioned to you, abdicate the stewardship of art, to threaten the Zakheim family with a 90-day demand letter to come up with, at that time in May or June of this year, to come up with $8 million to remove the murals and store them. We find this offensive. Subsequently to that, after a large outcry, the developers created a RFP, which stands for Request for Proposal, to only remove the murals for about $1.5 to $1.8 million to store them indefinitely. Our issue, and when I say our issue, these are academicians, alums, staff, UCSF, other campuses who don't understand why the master plan, which at the time didn't exist to build the new campus, didn't include a public access space to view these murals for the medical community and the public at large. We find even today, after submitting the RFP and receiving and granting an RFP, that they still have not shown true intentions. And when I say that, it's because they just want to remove them. They haven't guaranteed they curate or store them in an environmentally safe environment until they make the decision where and when they would come out, if at all. This is what we find egregious, that they don't have a long-term plan to include it in the architectural plan for the Parnassus campus, or if they decide they don't want them, why then don't they, not that I want this to happen because I believe they truly should be here, have they not designated another public access permanent installment within so many months or years? Anyway, that's our issue. We hope the UC regents find value in sustaining their stewardship and quit worrying about spending money when the first thing they should be doing is saving art. You can spend $1 billion on buildings, but you can't replace the art. That's the crisis here.
One of the issues that is important is that these murals really are the only, as I mentioned earlier, the only art murals on the history of healthcare in California. And we believe that it's important that these students, the faculty, the public see the history of art, of medicine, the history of medicine in California at UCSF. That's where it belongs. And the fact that the university still has not made a commitment, the executives, Brian Newman, who's a vice president for development, has not made a commitment to make sure that they stay at this campus concerns us. The students, the faculty, the interns, the workers here should be able to see the history of medicine in California. It's part of the history of California. It's an art treasure. And we also raised the issue, how is it that an official vice president of development at UCSF, Brian Newman, how is it that he was unaware of the importance of these murals? It's astounding because one of the requirements, responsibilities of the University of California is to protect the art treasures. And this is important for the people and also the staff and the workers. So our next speaker is Lisa Milos. She's a rank and file member of UPTE, UCSF UPTE, speaking as rank and filer. Welcome, Lisa.
As a rank and file member of UPTE and also as a Spanish medical interpreter, we bridge worlds. That's our job, to bridge worlds, culturally and medically. And we see how culture and medicine combined offer the best kind of care and offer the best kind of understanding in being able to provide a culturally appropriate education, a culturally appropriate medicine. And in essence, that's what the murals are capturing. The murals capture the history of medicine in California, which not only has Biddie Mason, an African-American midwife, depicted there at the same level as her white counterpart doctor, I think his name is Dr. Griffin, if I'm not mistaken, which was unheard of at the time. She not only does it depict Biddie Mason, but it also depicts the indigenous Native American cultures and medicinal practices. It also depicted a lot of mistakes made along the way that were introduced by European medicine at the time, like bleeding out and things like that. It also has a very distinct features in terms of the way that it's painted. It's showing things in a certain level because it's curved. So the artistic quality of it is incredible. The way that the dimensions and the perspectives are given, and in fact it's an anecdote. But in the 1950s, one of the doctors that was giving lectures at Toland Hall demanded to get it papered over because it was distracting, quote unquote, distracting the students from their medical education. It's a very powerful mural. It's a jewel, and to tell you the truth, I think that the medical community and medicine in general owes a serious debt to workers and to the African American communities and to the Native American communities. The medical community owes a serious debt in many aspects. There's been a lot of mistreatment. We don't have to go far back. The Tuskegee, the forced sterilizations that were employed by people in power, and the essence of these murals, the fact that they were created during the Works Public Administration, during a time where it was a major recession, in major depression in this country, and the workforce that was being deployed at the time was a workforce that incorporated artists, incorporated the unions, incorporated the struggle of working people in this country. So it also has that meaning as well. And that's something that we cannot allow to be destroyed or shut away in storage, because this is part of who we are, and we cannot be prioritizing just state-of-the-art building with nice glass and shiny things without also bringing along the history of the people that actually make medicine and art possible, which are the workers. So, thank you.
My press comments are titled UC, Public Institution or Predatory Corporate Institution. The following comments are made on behalf of People's Park Historic District Advocacy Group, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the preservation and improvement of the People's Park as both an important historical site and neighborhood open space. We see the struggle to preserve the history of medicine in California murals as the West Bay version of the struggle to preserve People's Park in Berkeley. The University of California is operating in a similar manner in both San Francisco and Berkeley, showing a lack of concern for its surrounding communities. Its behavior is more akin to a predatory corporation than a public institution. By threatening destruction of public art, demolition of 3 historic buildings, eviction of rent-controlled tenants, destruction of a cultural and historical legacy and public open space, and formation of a partnership with an anti-tenant real estate corporation. The plan by UCSF to demolish the frescoes created by Bernard Zakheim in the Toland Hall Auditorium in UC Hall needs to be replaced with an alternative that would preserve the murals and display them for the public on the UCSF Parnassus Heights campus. These murals, created in the 1930s through support from the Works Progress Administration, have educated and inspired generations of the public and students of UCSF. They are threatened with destruction when UCSF demolishes Toland Hall to make way for a new building. However, the murals are entirely removable and could be conserved, removed, stored, and reinstalled by UCSF in its new facility. Instead, UCSF contacted the family of the artist and asked it to remove the murals at the family's expense. Additionally, the ownership status is under review by the General Services Administration, calling into question UCSF's right to destroy artwork it does not own. We disagree with these actions of UCSF and are aware that the Mission Bay campus of UCSF has a public art program to which a percentage of construction cost was dedicated. Surely, a small fraction of new construction costs at Parnassus Heights would fund a public art collection that could include the historic Zakheim murals and many new artworks. Why is the Mission Bay precedent not being followed for the new multi-billion-dollar facility on Parnassus Heights? This is all particularly disturbing because the multicultural content of the murals portrays the long history of the diverse people who have participated in the healing arts within our state. Why would UCSF suppress this history at a time when California is seen as a state that has made some successful strides in tackling the issue of diversity within the health professions? Although our major issue is with the murals, we are also concerned about the carved frame oak carving by Michael von Meyer and James Warrender that was also commissioned as part of the WPA Federal Art Project and is located in Toland Hall. Likewise, it should be conserved, removed, stored, and reinstalled by UCSF in its new facilities. Both the murals and the wood carving are part of an amazing array of public art in San Francisco created by the New Deal. This heritage is recognized worldwide and brings viewers to the city to see it. Many of them go to Coit Tower, where Bernard Zakheim's work is also represented. Stripping part of this legacy from public view is unacceptable. Conversely, ways of making it more accessible should be sought. UC is not bound by local landmark status, and as stated, it is above any local regulations or resolutions. In its arrogance, does it also feel it is above local sentiment and local pride in the city's artistic and historical legacy? We urge the Board of Regents to address the general issue of public art. The purpose of Dr. J. Michael Bishop, Nobel laureate and emeritus UCSF chancellor, in establishing the Mission Bay Art Collection was to quote, create an environment that will be a credit and benefit to the entire community, a stimulating and pleasant place to work and visit, and a permanent legacy to the city, unquote. This purpose should apply equally to UCSF Parnassus Heights. Why is Chancellor Hallgood not advocating for public art in general, and in particular defending the Zakheim murals? San Francisco and many other California cities have percent for art programs, as do 23 states. California and its public university system do not, and this allows UC at whim to have a percent for art policy or not. Now is the time for the UC regions to correct this and develop a UC statewide percent for art program, as well as developing an alternative to destroying the art in Toland Hall. We demand UCSF include project alternatives that protect all of the artwork in Toland Hall and develop a plan for its display in preferably a new location on the UCSF Parnassus Heights campus with increased public accessibility and interpretation. Meanwhile, across the bay, UC Berkeley staff is making the rounds of Berkeley City Council and commissions, presenting its long-range development plan. After its presentations, UCB staff have gotten a lot of critical comments. For example, being accused of attempting to devour Berkeley and turn it into another Irvine, California, with its ghastly array of glass box high-rises. UCB's project number one was skewered. A proposal to build a multi-story housing and commercial block on Oxford Street between University Avenue and Berkeley Way, which would unnecessarily destroy 3 historic buildings. One of them is by one of Berkeley's master architects, and displaced residents of 1921 Walnut Street, a rent-controlled building with many longtime tenants. UCB plans a public-private partnership for the project, teaming up with the Prometheus Real Estate Group. This is the same corporation that spent many millions as the fourth largest contributor fighting the passage of the Rent Control Initiative, Proposition 21. Prometheus is headed by Jackie Safier, whose foundation is contributing $500 million to the Parnassus Heights project. So UC Berkeley is partnering with an exploitive corporation to deal with its budget deficit, created in part by its ill-fated investment in a new, now empty football stadium with luxury boxes that never produced a profit, and the added deficit created by the COVID crisis. In its scramble for cash, UC Berkeley is monetizing land it's purchased in Berkeley outside the campus boundaries. The city of Berkeley and neighborhood groups are involved with lawsuits regarding UC Berkeley overreach and its potential impact on the community. In the time of a pandemic with no foreseeable end, the imminent threat of urban wildland fires and the ever-present threat of a major earthquake, it is difficult to contemplate why UC would think of giving up the open space of People's Park, the project number 2 site. The recent growth of plans of the university will push Berkeley to the limits and override its capacity to accommodate this unfettered growth. The 2 proposed housing projects with their public-private partnerships investment scheme seem to be a vehicle for capitalizing on the need for housing by selling out the Berkeley community to pad the university's budget. At the rate it's going, soon the university will surround Berkeley, not the other way around. People's Park Historic District Advocacy Group has an alternative that would bring the city, the university, and the South Campus community together to preserve and improve the park as both an important historical site and an important neighborhood open space. For details, go to the People's Park Historic District website. San Francisco, Berkeley, or California doesn't expect UC to be pushing destruction of public art or disruptive real estate plans. A world-class institution of public education should not behave in this manner.
Okay, this is Steve Zeltzer. We're having a press conference on the issue of the protection of the Zakheim murals at UCSF at Toland Hall, and also particularly the depictions of the history of medicine in California, and Biddie Mason, who is a healthcare worker, former slave, who was a midwife and the first African-American healthcare worker depicted in a mural in California in the history of medicine. And we're joined by Nathan Zakheim, the son of the artist Bernard Zakheim, who did these murals. So, Nathan, why don't you talk about the importance of protecting these murals and also keeping them on the campus for the students, the faculty, the staff, and the public?
Well, yes, it seems, I hate to use a strong word, but it seems insane to not have them on the campus. I look at these murals as being to UCSF the history of medicine in California, painted by my mother and father, or father and mother, Bernard Zakheim and Phyllis Wright, and later Zakheim. And they painted so comprehensively the early history of medicine. It is a full document. It deserves to have its own center. I would like to see it as a learning center where Jenna Leek or some people like that could do it, the art for healing in the atmosphere. But anyhow, these murals, I would say, are as key. Well, the archivist, Polina Ilieva, said that these murals were the crown jewel of UCSF. And I would agree with her. Simply hard to get around the fact that my parents painted the mural, but having this, I'm a professional conservator, so I've worked on many murals. And I know exactly how to take them out. I took two murals out of Cole Hall in 1967. They've been on public display where anybody can touch them or bang into them, have never suffered a bit of damage, even though you can just walk right up to them and touch them. But I would say that these murals are to the San Francisco University campus, UCSF campus, what the Golden Gate Bridge is to San Francisco. The crown jewel is what the archivist said, and I would agree. It's like the beating heart or the core heart of the university campus. How they would like to go without them or why they would want to go without them is beyond imagination. On top of it, I spent decades restoring those murals, the Toland Hall murals. They had been wallpapered over. There was some damage from when the wallpaper was taken off. I worked for 2 years completely bringing them up to speed. They're in fine condition. People complain that there may be some water damage or something. That, for me, that's easy to fix. I've done this so many times. I've taken 10 major murals out of public buildings and, more to the point, reinstalled them without the need of doing extensive conservation work afterwards. So I know exactly how to do it. And I was going to work with a contractor. There were two contractors bidding, and I was with one of them, and that contractor didn't get the bid. So the other contractor, as far as I can tell from their written material, they don't have the slightest, no, I'm not going to say that. They would be very benefited if I were to work with them as a consultant, because I'm so anxious to see it done right and taken out in fully consolidated condition, not just take them out and then consolidate them later, consolidated in situ in their location and then take them out. I can do that, and I know exactly how to do that. What happens is that the Biddie Mason was a slave in Kentucky, I think. She walked all the way across.
And she was a slave in Utah.
She started out in Arkansas.
I see.
And she walked all the way across with her slave owner, master, and a bunch of others. He had about 30 slaves. And she did the midwife work. She did the healing work. She was knowledgeable in Afro-American medical systems, which is interesting because way back then, she was
She was a healer. She
was born in the early part of the 1800s. So back then, she was able to. She was able to learn stuff that was not that far from the actual village African community roots. And then as she walked across the United States, a couple of thousand miles from Arkansas to Utah, because her master, had become a Mormon, she learned Native American healing practices along the way. When she got to Utah, her master had a difference of opinion with the people in Utah, went out to Pasadena to work with a newly founded Mormon church there. And that's where she got her roots. And I can't expand on it too much, but it's a fascinating story how she and her three children were put in jail in Pasadena, and her master had to leave California because he was not able to keep slaves, and he wanted to keep his slaves and take them to Texas. So she was put in jail until he left, came out, was emancipated, then started working for Dr. Gibson, he noted doctor. There were not many doctors at the time, and he paid her. And with the money, she bought land in Los Angeles. Ended up as a multimillionaire in the 1800s terms. She ended up owning a huge amount of commercial property and her grandson continued that endeavor. So then she founded the church, the FAME Church, First American Methodist, whatever, Afro-American Church, in her house. She had a mansion and she bought, and in her house, and that later on went on, is still going on in Pasadena. And because of that, there's over 20,000 congregation members in the church she founded in Pasadena. And then she created a foundation to help foster children. And her motto was, "Blessed is the hand that gives, is open, because as it gives, it also receives." That was her motto, one of her mottos. Blessed is the hand that gives, because open is open, but to the open hand, because as it gives, it receives. So she has several, there's just maybe 4 or 5 people of her lineage remaining, and they were under the impression that I was going to take the mural out and put a replica of the panel with Biddie Mason in their new center that they're forming downtown. There's a Biddie Mason Park also downtown off of 3rd Street, I think, in a commercial center, but it's dedicated to her. And I've sort of said that if I can take the mural off, I will make a replica of that panel and put it in your new church on, Candlestick. So that's where things were. I became a little disheartened when a bidder who had already said they couldn't remove the mural without damage or possible destruction got the bid, and the one which had the bid, which I was working with, could guarantee that the mural would be in impeccable condition, because out of 10 murals, I haven't had a single one problem. And one mural that I did in Houston was, it was 14 feet high, 48 feet wide, and curved like a J. It was exactly the same construction of 3/4 inch plaster on wire mesh as the ones on Toland Hall. We took it out in one piece with the 0 damage caused by the conservation, and it was transported 1,100 miles from Houston, from the MD Anderson, the cancer building, to the Artesia Library in Artesia, New Mexico, and installed there in perfect condition. So can these be removed? And it wasn't expensive. It didn't cost more than $500,000 for me to take the murals out. That mural out. It was an astonishing thing. They advertised as the world's largest fresco removal and move to a new location in the newspapers. So with that, there's no doubt that I can get them out in perfect condition, but it would require me working with the winning bidder, which would be nice. I'd like to work with the winning bidder, and I wouldn't charge much. My God, it's my father and mother painted the murals, and as long as I had a roof over my head while I'm doing it and enough food to eat, I would be glad to work with them to do it. All I have to do is supervise and provide the scale drawings that I used for the bid that was competitive with the winning bid. And it's all there, and it's not expensive. Just a few $1,000s for maybe $16,000 for every aspect of the conservation part, including the panels to move them on. It's easy. For me, it's easy. I've done it 10 times, and it has a Coronado Island, the producer Joel Silver's house. I put in one of the Ramos Martinez murals there, and everything worked out incredibly well, and with 0 damage and very little conservation work required afterwards. So anyhow, that's the idea. So to get I'm going to make a Biddie Mason Learning Center in the new UC building, so that the murals would be standing on telescoping tubes with bases all around them, where they could sell memorabilia of Biddie Mason. They could sell memorabilia of other people in the mural and have a lunch area there. And I would like to see someone like Jenna Leek with her Art for Recovery program having children there working on coloring books of the images of the murals. And all of that would be a delightful prospect for the people of San Francisco, and because it would be by appointment, it wouldn't overcrowd the medical center. So whatever floor they were on, it could have its own access, but it wouldn't be as though there'd be a big major tourist attraction. People would have to get reservations and be able to go there. Or it could be run through Jenna Leek's Art for Recovery program. So it would be called the Biddie Mason Learning Center in honor of Biddie Mason, but it would be the Bernard Zakheim History of Medicine in California frescoes, which would be the star of that, and Biddie Mason would be the center personality in the panel number 8, where she's beautifully featured working equally side by side with the doctor.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your thoughts and presentation, Nathan.
You're most welcome. I hope it will tip things in the direction of love and concern for others and concern for the well-being of everyone, particularly now when the Afro-American population is coming to the foreground. My mother's academic research produced Mason for that mural, and it's time for her to be seen, not simply peeked at through some sort of a video.
We're here again at UCSF. We're calling on the proper protection of the murals, and we urge people who are watching this to contact the University of California, contact Governor Newsom, who's on the Board of Regents, contact President Drake, who's the president of the University of California, and let them know. We're also going to be participating in the next Regents meeting as well, urging them to make sure that these murals are properly protected and also that they stay on this campus as a centerpiece, really, of the great art of California, the great art of the WPA. So thanks for joining us.